Hey everyone, Joshua Kirk here with you once again, and now it's time for my annual mid-year video segment where I go over some albums that I've heard over the year that I loved, that I think are great, that I think are absolutely worth checking out. So today I am doing my favorite albums of 2020 so far. Excuse me. 2020 has been a very tumultuous year, easily one of the strangest years in recorded history, but I will say one of the great things about 2020 has been a lot of the awesome music that's been dropping this year. In fact, this is the one favorite so far list that was probably the hardest for me to make, mostly because of me having to narrow it down. So, whereas in previous favorite albums so far videos, I've had 16 albums on the list, today I'm going to do 18 albums for this list, because this year just has had lots of excellent music, amidst, the pandemic and, all the crazy stuff that's happening right now. But anyway, let's get to the albums, and they're listed in alphabetical order of the artist, just in case you're wondering. First album I want to mention is the one that everyone seems to be talking about this year, and it's Fiona Apple's Fetch the Bolt Cutters. So it certainly shouldn't surprise you that I am yet another critic who absolutely loves this record. I can't say it's my favorite album of the year. There are a couple of moments that I don't quite care for in here. And I don't know, I probably just don't really connect to the album maybe as much as some people do, but still, I can't deny just how cathartic, raw, primal, nuanced, emotionally potent, and hilarious this album really is. And given that Fiona Apple has long been a pretty special talent, it would make sense that on this record, she really managed to make the most out of recording at home and managed to make her least commercial recording to date. And that's ultimately Fiona Apple is at her best when she's not really, trying to calculate anything. She sounds like she's in the moment with her songwriting. So, next is a bit of a surprise underground hip hop album. The new Armand Hammer record, Shrines, which if you don't know who Armand Hammer is, it's the hip-hop duo of Billy Woods and Elucid, two of underground hip-hop's most innovative poets, and I think they just have such great chemistry with one another, and even though this record doesn't really do much in the way of new things, it does, So they still continue to get better as lyricists and as masters of flow, and also the beats on here are some of the most creative, and they complement their verses very well. What makes it so compelling right now is just how relevant the music and even the album cover on it seem to be with 2020. And the next record is certainly another one that I was absolutely looking forward to, and I think it completely lived up to my expectations, as it is probably my favorite singer-songwriter record of the year so far. And that is the new Phoebe Bridgers record, Punisher. Phoebe really outdid herself on this record. Thematically, sonically, this is just this is without a doubt her best record. This record, certainly enjoyed it more than her last record, even though I know a lot of people definitely enjoyed that one quite a bit. I just kind of relate to the emotions on this album, I guess, a little bit more. I think it's more direct and cohesive, and I love how, even though it sounds familiar, it still definitely is a much more fully realized version of the sad songs that Phoebe writes. It's just absolutely amazing. Next is an album that was actually recorded, produced, and written completely in quarantine by the Queen of Pop, Charli XCX, and it's called How I'm Feeling Now. As you know, I recently did an album review of Charli's last record, Charli. I think with this album, she took what she did so well on her last record and just did it even better on How I'm Feeling Now. It's kind of raw and very in the moment, feels very lived in, with some great production, and certainly some lyrics that can really connect with anyone who's just been losing their minds in lockdown. So this is one of the reasons why, this album is kind of one of the reasons why I will remember lockdown like so vividly, even if it isn't in the most positive kind of way, but you know, maybe it is in the most positive way because Charli made an excellent album out of it. Next is my favorite metal record of the year, in a year that I think has been a little bit slow in terms of great metal, but at least we have the new Code Orange record, Underneath, where I feel the Pittsburgh metalcore group are really taking metalcore and basically updating it for the 2020s. It sounds like something that maybe should be in a Marvel movie, with just how intense and how sort of electrifying it really feels. I love the way in which the band fuses some metal elements with some glitchy electronics and kind of trippy beats as well. There's definitely a bit more of a dubstep influence on this record. You could definitely hear the Slipknot influence quite a bit, as the group actually did work with Corey Taylor from Slipknot, so that completely makes sense. And the album flows very well. It's got killer performances. It's a killer record. Another rap album that sort of came out of the blue, but I definitely was very welcome to it because it certainly is yet another very excellent album from easily one of my favorite rappers working today, and that is Freddie Gibbs' collaboration with the Alchemist, Alfredo. I mean, dare I say it, I think I actually like this record a little bit better than his 2019 record with Madlib, Bandana. Which is saying a lot. I just think the beats throughout this record are just incredibly strong. There's barely a weak beat on the record, to be completely honest. Freddie's flows and bars are better than ever. I think these psychedelic, kind of mellow beats, I think very much complement his style very well. Some great features on this record. I did not expect that the Tyler, the Creator collaboration would be that fantastic, but definitely Freddie and Gangsta Gibbs and Tyler are one fire combo, that's for sure. It's short, it's short, but I think the brevity of it only allows the music to really shine through that much more with very few weak spots. So next is definitely the most creative post-punk record I've heard this year, and just how they very much recontextualize post-punk in some very interesting ways, and that is HMLTD's debut album, West of Eden. I know this band's been around for a little while, but I'm actually kind of late to the party. Didn't get to listen to them until 2020, but man, you know, I wish I didn't sleep on them for that long, because, you know, what they're doing with post-punk is just so impeccable. Just sort of imagining post-punk as if it existed during the Broke era, or maybe even the John Wayne spaghetti western era, as well as, you know, sort of recontextualizing it in the pop world as well. It's a little all over the place sonically, and yet the songs, I think, flow very well. It makes it feel like this very impressionist rock opera almost, and I love it. So next is another underground hip-hop album that I did not expect would get as much acclaim as it did, but I think it completely deserves it because I think it's absolutely one of his best, and that is Ka's latest record, Descendants of Cain. Ka, in case you don't know, is a Brownsville rapper who sort of contextualizes brutal stories about his real life. So by filtering it through certain places in history, whether it's a samurai or Greek mythology, or in the case of this record, the Bible. And I think it results in easily some of his most fully realized and most sort of heartbreaking stuff to date. I mean, this is a very chilling and kind of tragic album. It's definitely not an easy listen, but yet I think given what we're all going through right now, we kind of need this music to sort of heal our wounds, pretty much. And I'm pretty sure this album maybe will cut even deeper now that we have all these Black Lives Matter protests over, like, over black people getting ruthlessly, killed by police. So next is I'm going to go into a little bit of country this year because I feel like alternative country has had a very strong year so far. This is the new Pokey LaFarge record, Rock Bottom Rhapsody. Pokey LaFarge, in case you don't know, he's been around in kind of like the current bluegrass scene for the last decade or so. But on this new record of his, he completely outdoes himself by doing more elements of blues and jazz and soul and vintage rock and roll. He is a guy that definitely wears influences on his sleeves, and yet he really makes it his own with a very colorful vocal display, some great songwriting. I love the way the album flows, as if it's like some old vintage vaudeville show or something like that. It's just like incredible. And also the track Fuck Me Up is easily one of the best songs of 2020 in my opinion. So next is another country artist that will come off as unfamiliar to many, but if you go to Spectrum Pulse's channel and go to one of his On the Pulse episodes, you'll definitely see this album in there. And that is the new Gabe record, Honky Tonk Hell. And let me just say, shout out to Mark Grondin for just, for introducing me to just this incredible record. It's definitely my favorite country album of the year so far. I think there's some killer performances and really sharp fusions of country with gospel and southern rock. It's maybe not really doing anything in the way of like new things for these sounds, but what it is doing is just showcasing a fantastic lyricist with just a very fiery voice that'll just, that'll just blow your mind. The album is very versatile. It flows very well. If you're skeptical about country music, I implore you, check out Jason Isbell and then Sturgill Simpson, and then, check out more obscure people like these guys, and you'll find that there is still awesome country music out there. Next is a singer-songwriter record that I certainly was not expecting I would be this amazed by, but certainly did, make me feel, this record makes me feel good. Like, I don't know why. And that is the new Laura Marling record, Song for Our Daughter. I mean, this is the kind of record that even those that haven't really been super into Laura Marling in the past have gone on to say, that record of hers was actually pretty good. And it most certainly is very good. This is totally what we needed amidst, the kind of rough times of our lockdown. We just needed to feel like someone was there for us to, let us know, that they're there even when they're not. And that's kind of why this record makes me feel so good, even though, yes, there are moments on it that definitely give me some melancholy feelings as well. And, you know, musically, this is like one of her more stripped back records, but I think that ultimately benefits the album because it only allows Laura's songwriting to, you know, really shine that much more. And I think the strings are beautiful, and I think the kind of spare production from Ethan Johns is definitely perfect for her. And if she wants to do more stuff like this, you know, I'm on board. Next is an album that I did review recently, and one that has continued to grow on me, and that is the new Mac Miller record, Circles, which of course is a posthumous record, released less than 2 years after his passing, and a record that really does cut deep. I mean, he does talk quite a bit on this album about death and depression and all kinds of stuff that, you know, he was going through at the time he recorded the vocals. But then we have people like John Bryan, who handles the production here, really sort of capturing what made made Max such a special talent in hip hop music and R&B and stuff like that. In fact, this record is probably the closest he's ever come to a singer-songwriter record, as there definitely are some kind of folky and even rock sort of elements on this album too. And I was definitely very happy to see that this isn't the money grab, and this is actually something that needed to be put together and not just something to, you know, help the estate make more money. So next is another record that a lot of people seem to be raving about right now, and it's the new Perfume Genius record, Set My Heart on Fire Immediately. Man, the same artist that put out my favorite album of 2017 came through with yet another amazingly ambitious and just flat out gorgeous record. In fact, this record surprisingly doesn't really sound like No Shape that much. I mean, while that record was like him at his most bombastic, this one seems to be one of his more intimate records. And he's embracing more country and more funk and all kinds of different things on this record that I haven't heard on previous Perfume Genius LPs. Mike Andreas is just a really massive talent, one of indie music's most innovative songwriters, and you know, I think he continues to have just a very bright future ahead of him. Next is another artist who really outdid herself on their latest project, and that is the new Poppy record, I Disagree. Poppy used to be like this very strange kind of, you know, meme sort of artist who did this music that was very calculated and bubbly and sweet. But now she's like coming through with some music that incorporates more elements of metal and industrial and stuff like that. So now we've got a record that's just full of rage and easily Poppy's most human record to date. And I think it's a very fantastic transition that she's made into that sort of sound. Killer performances, sharp songwriting, great hooks, really cool musical transitions that happen throughout. It's most definitely Poppy at her best, and for those who've never really been into Poppy before, this is definitely a record that will appeal to even those people. Next is another record that I think we all absolutely needed right now, especially since, you know, the police killing in George Floyd, and that is the new Run the Jewels record, RTJ4. Killer Mike and LP are at it once again with what I think is their best record since Run the Jewels 2. Jules too. I mean, the flows, the bars, the production, the features, all of it is just very well done. It's just very well done. Definitely packs a lot of punch, but yet definitely there's even more, I think, raw emotions put into this record than ever before. I mean, Killer Mike delivers easily some of his best verses on the record. I mean, Walking in the Snow is a very prime contender for the best track here. The track here, LP delivers some fantastic wisdom here, as well as just some really cool beats that definitely capture that usual Run the Jewels aggression, but definitely have more of the hugeness of maybe a Kanye beat or something like that. Beat on here, and also all the features are fantastic, and of course the closing track is easily Run the Jewels' one of their more ambitious pieces, and an absolutely great way to end the record. Next is likely my favorite pop record of the year, and that is the new Rina Sawayama record, Sawayama. I think this is a really fantastic sort of reinvigoration of 90s pop music. I mean, you can definitely hear the insane, you can definitely hear the TLC and the Britney Spears influence, as well as kind of the rock influence of a group like Evanescence or somebody like that. Yet another artist that, like Poppy, is fusing together elements of pop and R&B with more elements of hard rock and new metal only I think she's definitely more pop leaning for sure. And there's some great songwriting on here. Hooks are addictive. Rina singing throughout will have you just, singing along at the top of your lungs. It's like, it's such a fun record to listen to, and definitely deserves all the hype it's been receiving lately. I know it's crazy. Like, I've mentioned all these albums, and I haven't even gotten to my favorite album of the year so far. But here it is. Spanish Love Songs. Brave Faces Everyone. This is a record that, yet another record, seeing Mark Grondin from Spectrum Pulse give it such a positive review, I decided to check it out, and boy, am I glad I did. This record cut deep emotionally before the pandemic, but it cuts even more so now that the world is just burning. At least I have this record to help me through it all. Like, this is definitely one of the best emo and pop punk records I've heard, maybe not just in recent years, but I think in my life too. Just great performances, great songwriting, production is fantastic. I love how it sounds definitely it's a perfect balance between being polished and raw. As I find on some punk revivalists' albums, their mixing is definitely, far from perfect. And I'm not saying that this record is perfect either, but just like, the not so lo-fi production, I think, really captures the electrifying performances very well. But what really makes this band so strong is just having a really excellent frontman. Dylan Slocum is an absolute lyrical talent, as well as a singer that's, definitely will know to just take those heartstrings and just tug them hard. All the songs on here are great. Not a single dud in the track list. I'm not saying all these things just because Spectrum Pulse gave it a 10. It's just like, I really connected with it too. And finally, my second favorite country album of the year, and certainly yet another one that everyone seems to be raving about right now, and I think it completely deserves it. The new Waxahatchee record, St. Cloud. This record, definitely is one of the more surprising records I've heard this year. I've never been a huge Waxahatchee fan. Like, I wouldn't say I, like, disliked her or anything like that. I just would say that, I couldn't quite connect with her songwriting in the past, I guess. And also, her sound I thought was just kind of plain. But I love the, like, rootsier, like, Americana sound that she's embraced on this record. For one, it suits her voice very well, and definitely makes it feel very lived in. And also, I love how ambitious she gets on certain tracks. Like, for example, the song Fire definitely contains one of Katie Crutchfield's more sophisticated vocal performances. The way that she just, builds a melody with her voice is just incredible on a song like that. And also, I love how versatile this record is. There are points that are very reflective, points that are very mellow, points that are also kind of fiery and sort of upbeat on tracks like Hell or something like that. This is just a very strong record, and great for drives out in the country too. So definitely check that out. So yeah, those are my favorite records of 2020. This year I think has so far been really good for music. I definitely have faith that the year will continue to be that good, that good, and just check out all these great records. And I'll see you for episode 270 of Album of the Day.